Well, it's pretty obvious there is a crisis on our southern border. Tens of thousands of people crossing illegally or arriving to demand asylum. Who is to blame for that crisis? Again and again, we have heard that we, American citizens, are to blame. Are we? Heather McDonald is a contributing editor at City Journal. She's author of the upcoming book called The Diversity Delusion, How Race and Gender Pandering Corrupt the University and Undermine Our Culture, and she joins us tonight. Heather, this is one of those assumptions that I think most people on the other side, on the open border side, take for granted, that if there's a crisis on the border, it's the fault of American citizens. Is it?
No, Tucker, it's a cardinal principle of the left that favored victim groups have no moral agency. Their behavior doesn't count. They're victims inevitably of structural racism. But the fact of the matter is that if you are facing a deportation risk, the person who's responsible for that risk is you by having made the voluntary choice to come into this country illegally. Deportation is the universal response to illegal entry across the world. It's practiced without apology in countries south of the border. So the American people are not to blame for this. They are simply asking that the rule of law be enforced.
But what you hear when you make that point, and I think you're absolutely right, and I've made it, and the response you get is, well, the United States is such a poisonous force in the region that our foreign policy is responsible for the fact that people are fleeing El Salvador and Guatemala and Honduras. How would you respond to that?
It's preposterous. I would ask back in response, well then, if U.S. is so poisonous, if this is a country so riven by racism and misogyny, why do you want all of these people of color to come into it? The left knows in some part of its brain that in fact this is the most opportunity-filled, tolerant country on earth, which is why it wants to bring in as many third world people of color as possible here. But at the same time, it insists on this false narrative that we are engaging in lethal bias and discrimination.
What happens to people when you bring them into a country legally, let them stay illegally, give them asylum, any of those routes, and the second they get here, you tell them the country you've just moved to is an immoral place run by racists? How does that affect their view of their new home, would you say? Well,
and that is certainly the propaganda that they get in schools from kindergarten onwards. It results in assimilation downwards. We are seeing in the Hispanic community, yes, wonderful entrepreneurship, as your previous guest saw, but we also see significant assimilation into the underclass with gang involvement, dropping out of school, highest teen out-of-wedlock pregnancy rate in the country. And it doesn't help to be told that you're in a place that somehow oppresses you and to think of yourself as a victim.
No, I think that's exactly right. Heather McDonald, thank you very much.
Thank you, Tucker.